We are back once again with Erika Brown of the Cricket coming to us from her office in beautiful downtown Manchester by the Sea. Welcome back, Erika.
Hey there, Kory. How are you, honey?
I'm great. Okay, so there was some big news coming from Essex this meet. They had the big meeting regarding the parcel nine. I think it's a 9.5 acre parcel on Apple Street.
Boy, you think? That's exactly what it was. You hit the nail on the head. It was on Apple Street. This is the second of two, and this was, by the way, a special town meeting, the subject of a one article special town meeting last Monday. And it was in the cafeteria of the Essex Elementary School cafeteria, which tells me that they didn't, that's usually where they have special town meetings because the attendance is relatively low compared to an annual town meeting, which is in the gymnasium, right? So you could tell that they thought it was going to be a normal town meeting,
Hmm.
but 210 people showed up, which basically was 12 pounds of sausage in a 10-pound bag, that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. It was standing room only. People, literally, there were literally people standing on the perimeter of the thing, and it was kind of packed, so it gave it this feel of like this stuff happening. But it was just for one article of business, and I'm gonna jump to the funny end, which was with all the heat and the anxiety in the room over this issue, and I'll tell you what happened. The meeting, once Jeff Jones, the moderator, called the meeting to order, the business was done within 20 minutes. I don't think I've ever been to a faster town
Oh,
meeting.
wow.
And with all those people, it was incongruous. It was just sort of, it didn't match. It didn't match. The feeling in the room didn't match what happened.
Yeah, it's like they implemented the pitch clock like in baseball now. We got to get out of here.
Exactly. So anyway, so that's what happened, and that's what happened at the meeting. But in terms of the vote, let's talk about the vote.
Mhm.
What it was about was one article on whether or not the town should, and we talked about this last week, exercise a right of first refusal on a 9 acre parcel of it wasn't land, it's a house with a barn and then a lot of land attached to it at 31 Apple Street. It's a beautiful property, actually. And it's the second part, it's of a two-parter. Last year, there was a companion piece of property that was only land of 11 acres across the street that also had a right of first refusal because these two properties were technically the same owner, and both of the properties were under the same deed restriction. The deed restriction was like related to agriculture, because it's a farm, although from all looks, it looked like a kind of a gentleman's farm to me.
Yeah.
um, but all of this was under a farm related restriction, which meant that the property, and this actually came up at the meeting, it actually was able to forego a lot of taxes. So about $24,000 in back taxes would be owed to the town if that designation changed, which it's going to do. So it's very interesting. So last year, the town exercised that right of first refusal and they bought for $1.2 million the 11 acres across the street. Here's the difference. That property was very strategic for the town because it abuts the transfer station, the DPW. And also, and this is very key, the access to the transfer station is over a culvert, and that culvert is becoming a little compromised. People are very worried about it with trucks and everything. So having that property gives the town options for another way to access the property, right? It also gives them options to play for other things because it's a big ass piece of property. I'm sorry to use that term.
I want that. I want that in a cricket headline.
It's a significant piece of property, sort of in one place, which kind of gives the town a lot of options. So let's go back to across the street and a year later, which happened on Monday. Suddenly the neighborhood has turned on. They've become animated. They're also animated because there's a project at the other end of the street to raise Apple Street, and which is a significant project. And the reason they're doing it is because of the flooding of the causeway that happens more and more. The town really wants to have a cut through for in case they're cut off, they need a cut through for emergency vehicles, or they really want one to avoid going to 128 on all the way around. So that also plays into the whole vibe of the neighborhood of that the town is starting to come on into their neighborhood, their quiet little bucolic street. And remember, Apple Street is technically in the town's, I don't think it's in the town's bylaw, but it's in the town's general law, the Essex general law, that Apple Street is a designated scenic street.
Yeah, it's
So
beautiful. You have
it's
to
a
cut
beautiful
through it.
street. So it's kind of protected that way. It's sort of designated as a historic, bucolic little street. So that doesn't really jibe with emergency access cut throughs
Oh,
and DPW transfer stations.
so it's considered a scenic byway?
It's not considered a scenic byway because I think that's a county or a statewide
Oh, okay.
designation, but it's the echo of that. It's the exact same idea, but
Hmm.
I think there are three streets, Choate Street, Apple Street, and there's one other, I forget what it is, that are designated by the town as scenic streets. So
Oh,
anyway, all these things kind of play into what happened on Monday. So Monday, let's go back to Monday. There's 210 people packed in there. I got the sense that nobody knew where the vote was going. Like somebody got up at the beginning and asked for a secret ballot. It was exactly the very first piece of business. Jeff Jones opened up the meeting and somebody stood up and go, "I want a secret ballot." And Jeff was like, "That's a little premature."
I don't want anyone to know. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, then just started this parade of kind of quick people speaking, and they all had in common, they were all really familiar with town government. Ed Neal got up and spoke. He's a former selectman. Susan Coviello got up and spoke. She's former school committee. Annie Cameron got up and spoke. Ben Buttrick, the FinCom chair, got up and spoke. Jeff Solard, the town accountant, got up and spoke. Those were the people who got up and asked questions or spoke. And basically, there were some sort of sub issues going on before the vote, and one of them was, well, where's this money coming from, and can't we just put it into our pocket for a tax rebate instead of spending it on property, going nutty on property? And they basically explained two things. Number one, there's an obligation for the town to put it before the voters if there's a right of first refusal. Even if the town didn't want to do it, it's not their right, it's the town people's right. So that's really was the spirit. The second thing is there was controversy about the money coming from the Canomo Point Real Estate Proceeds Fund. And there was about $13 million about 10, 15 years ago in that fund because they got proceeds once Canomo Point, that long lease kind of wrapped up, and now the town is able to sell those properties. So there were $13 million. That $13 million went to the town hall renovation. It went to Canomo Point renovation. It went to the public safety building in part, all these things. And that fund is now down to $2.2 million, right? And they've spent it on a lot of things that otherwise would have been bonded, right? So this has been very good to the town of Essex. So really, like Susan Coviello said, listen, I want to be really careful about how we spend that $2.2 million. And by the way, you can't spend that $2.2 million on a tax rebate. You're just not allowed. You have to, Ben Buttrick explained that. He said, you have to do it on capital items. So things like real estate or, big stuff, big initiatives. So in the end, they voted it down. And here's what they did. It's so funny. They asked for another secret ballot question got asked towards the end. And you only had to get 20% of the room say yes in order for it to be a secret ballot. And it didn't pass, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So everyone was loud and proud.
Yeah,
And
right.
in the end, the vote was like so decisive. It wasn't even funny. It was a clear no. And that's what happened. It was less than 10 people by my count in the room, the
Oh,
whole
wow.
room, that voted, for purchasing this property. The vast majority of people were like, basta, no. And that probably means that Apple Street people really turned out the vote. Or maybe just that people are careful about where they want their money to be spent next, and maybe not on a piece of property in Apple Street. They don't want to be in the real estate business. So.
Good, good. Yeah, big stuff there. Okay, well done, Erica. A couple of quick hits here. Do you want to talk about the recent meeting regarding cell signaling?
Yeah, just that this is back over in Manchester now, cell signaling, which is, proposing a very, very significant, by the time they're done, 250,000 square feet of office, off a biotech campus in Manchester in the limited commercial district. They're going to do it in two phases over 10 years. So don't, this isn't like 250,000 square feet. But everyone's been waiting for when they're going to actually come before the boards properly, because they haven't done that yet. They've announced they've purchased this 40 acres of property in the limited commercial district by the Manchester Athletic Club. That includes the Manchester Athletic Club, but they haven't gone before the boards. They went before something called the Stream Team. Manchester has something called the Coastal Stream Team. And it's not, it's not I almost said it's not a real board, but what I mean by that is it's not a board with any kind of, power to create things and create rules or to be, appealed to. However, they did appear before them, and in that meeting, they wanted to allay the fears of saying we'll be doing environmentally responsible things when we come to town, and our building isn't going to disrupt Sawmill Brook, yada, yada, yada. But what we were really interested in is, when are they going to start the project? And here's the answer. They're going to go before the planning board either in May or at the latest in June. And that means that they're off to the races. It's going to get started. And that's something that's going to happen probably if it goes before the boards. They're going to start, I think, in late 2024, early 2025, if I remember properly.
Gotcha. Okay. And lastly, quick note on the upcoming elections.
Yeah, we've got the election. I mean, we've got elections in the two towns coming up, and then we have, the Essex annual town meeting, which, by the way, is going to have like 42 articles on their warrant.
Wow.
By the way, that's May 1st. So
that'll end June 1st. What? That's massive.
Not only is it massive, which means it will definitely be in the gymnasium, but they also have things like some eminent domain issues, little slivers of land along Apple Street they want to take up. They have 2 overrides. It's going to be a meaty meeting that will probably not take 2 nights. And by the way, Jeff Jones, the moderator, he's going to be on vacation.
Oh boy.
And it's going to be Jody Harris, who is, I believe if it's Jody Harris, he's supposedly the assistant moderator, town moderator, which I didn't even know they had those.
But assistant to the town moderator.
Yeah. But they're going to have a new town moderator in charge for this meeting, which should be pretty interesting. Jody Harris, if it's the same person I'm thinking of, is the former select board, like way long ago, like 20 years ago in Essex. And one of the things that I remember him saying once was to this guy who was a developer off Apple Street. There's like a theme today. Developing these vast tracts, Peter Van Wyck, and he was developing lowland roads and Turtleback and all these roads, and he said, we know, he was on the board of selectmen. He goes, we know Mr. Van Wyck well. We've dealt with him extensively and expensively. I think that's the same Jody Harris. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, so back to the elections. The elections are coming up, and this week we're going to have in the paper meet the candidates for the 6 candidates in Essex and Manchester who are running in seats that are opposed. So that's how we do it. We don't introduce voters to everybody. We only introduce voters to the candidates who are in contested seats. And in Manchester, that is the planning board, where we have 4 people running for 2 seats. And in the Board of Selectmen, the select board in Manchester, 3 people running for 2 seats. And then in Essex, we have 2 people running for 1 seat.
Yeesh. All right. Erika, that is a lot to unpack, and it is time for me to get my big ass out of here. So thanks for your time, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.